This podcast is dedicated to helping high achievers on the verge of burnout reclaim a healthier work-life balance without sacrificing growth or success. Welcome to episode 34 of Give Yourself Some Leeway with me, your host, Eugene Lee. Today I am joined by Tess Jewell-Larsen, a mindset coach, yoga therapist, and co-host of the Happy Edit podcast. Tess and I had a great conversation, and she provided ample research and scientific evidence as to why it is not only paramount to your burnout recovery, but self-compassion and self-care can also improve your overall quality of life. If you enjoyed today's episode and would like to help me out, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast wherever you're listening to it. And also, if you could share it with a person who you think might just need to hear this today, it would really mean a lot to me. Thank you, and enjoy today's episode with Tess Jewell-Larsen. Well, Tess, it's great to have you here on the show. And one thing that I always like to start with coaches especially, is that we seem to all follow this similar pattern, that we all have this turning point or this moment of like a wake-up call that brings us on our journey of self-recovery and growth and development. And somewhere along that journey, some of us, especially coaches, we have this moment of realization that we want to help others. So what was that like for you, and why is it that you do what you do?
Well, first off, Eugene, thank you so much for having me here. I'm so happy to be on the podcast. Connecting with COVID, yes, like many people, but it definitely was a progression, and it didn't just happen then. It started many years before. I was working in a job that paid the bills. I enjoyed my colleagues, but it wasn't my dream job. It wasn't, the place I really wanted to be, but it was fine. It was an okay job. But over the years, I realized that there was very little support, and there's very little appreciation for what I did. The hours were all over the place, so it was really hard to create a fixed schedule, because you had every day was different. Little by little, this is all looking back, right? At the time, I didn't realize this, but little by little, I started getting more irritable, having mood swings. Generally, I'm a super happy person. I'm generally half full sort of person, cup half full, really positive. And this was taking a downturn. I was becoming much more negative. I was disconnecting from my work, from my friends, from my husband, just really withdrawing a lot. I was no longer as creative as I used to be. What at the time seemed very random started having these sessions of just breaking down on the kitchen floor, crying hysterically. And this this wasn't just with COVID. This was years before COVID that I was having these. And I just thought, oh well, I struggle with anxiety. This is just something I have to deal with. Not what else is going on? What's really causing this, right? Because that's just the way it is. That you're working, you're dealing with your stuff, you're doing what you need to do, and you just keep moving. And then COVID hit, and that's when things majorly fell apart for me. I also majorly injured myself because I didn't give myself time to rest. I didn't give myself time to recuperate, and it has changed my life forever, my injury. And so I was realizing that with all of these things, I started to realize actually something really isn't okay here. And I approached my husband and was like, I think I need to leave my job. This was the worst possible time to do that, because he was still on furlough because of COVID. And I had the main salary, but I couldn't anymore, because I knew if I stayed in there, then I was going to be so much worse, and I was probably going to end up in hospital, just not okay. So I gave my notice, and it was such a good feeling when I left. One side, absolutely terrified, because how are we going to pay the bills? But at the other side, oh my goodness, this was the right decision, right? That intuition, yes, I took the right step finally. And And so the next 6 to 8 months, I spent mainly focusing on me. So I had a couple of years before this, I'd gotten my certification to become a yoga teacher. And really, when I got it, I was like, I don't know if I'll ever teach yoga, but it's something fun. It's a hobby that I have, and I want to learn more about it. So I was like, well, in this time, I'll teach yoga because that makes me happy, and maybe I can make a job out of it for myself. I can start up my own business. But while I was doing that, I was also studying things like yoga for pelvic health to help get my body back together because I literally couldn't move very well at all. I studied yoga for mental health to learn how to stop myself from reaching those spiraling black depths. Excuse me, not deaths. Well, maybe that too. Um, I studied mindfulness coaching and became certified in mindfulness coaching, right? To learn how to catch those limiting beliefs and reframe them for myself originally, and then also realizing, hey, I can do this for other people. I trained in yoga nidra, meditation, learning how to rest and really heal my body from the inside out. And through all of this, I realized, okay, I'm loving all of this. I want to learn more. I want to become like, a person that really has a um more like full understanding of how to support myself, but then also how to help other people. So I started becoming training to become a yoga therapist. um and through all of this, right, through all of this studies, I'm realizing, okay, the reason why I got to that point in the first place was because I lost communication with myself. I lost that conversation, that honest conversation with myself. And I was just pushing through what I thought needed to happen, what I thought I needed to be doing to support my family, to just get by. And through that, I started realizing, okay, I'm regaining my creativity. I'm feeling more empowered. I'm able to move again, which is amazing. I felt more balanced and joyful. And, while I was working all this, like, I was still teaching my yoga classes and I was getting a little bit more into that. Like, no, okay, this is really the business I want to be doing. More and more, I started realizing that I was attracting others that were very much in similar situations that I had been in, right? They were overly stressed. They had adrenal fatigue. They were burning out. They had panic attacks. And, they were coming to me. I wasn't really searching them out. And so I was just starting kind of realizing little by little, like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is my path. Or at least this is the season that I'm in right now. And I need to, connect with that. So that's when I realized, yeah, I want to be a coach to help people manage their stress and step out of burnout. And when I realized that, that's when I just had so much more power and jumped my step. And it's just been an amazing journey since then.
That's amazing. There's actually so much there that it really brought me back to my own journey. And I think one of the important aspects is that it happens in two ways. It's either we want to become a coach and we find that we're self-coaching ourselves, kind of like someone studying psychology and realizing that they need to get psychology themselves first before they can become a psychologist. And also the other path where you want to self-coach yourself and you're doing it for your own benefit, for your own self-development. And you realize as a result, okay, now that I've learned this, I want to teach this to someone else. I was like, when you recognize and become more self-aware of these destructive patterns and the self-sabotage in your life, you become aware of those around you also suffering from the same down spiral. And it's almost like an act of altruism that you want to go out and help them too. Uh, Now that
Definitely.
you've learned that, you're like, okay, now I actually know how to solve this. I know my approach. At least I know what works for me, but maybe there's a way that I can help others who are feeling this way too.
And you definitely connect with those that identify with your story as well, right? So there's a coach for everyone, there's a support system for everyone. And my people are probably not your people, and your people are probably not the next person's people, right? And so I think that's what's so beautiful as well, is like we when we're able to share our stories, when we're able to know our story and have that communication, and then when we're able to share it with other people, right? They find you because they're listening, and they're ready for that, whatever it is that you're offering. And I honestly believe that this is such an important part of becoming a coach, and really learning how important your voice is for those people that are coming to you.
Yes, and it always brings me back to the analogy of the lighthouse and the tugboat. That when you're a coach, you're not going out and you're like trying to bring everyone individually to you, being like, "Come coach with me," and it's about being the lighthouse and being steadfast and just giving your message. Your message, just broadcasting your message out there, just sending your light out. And some people will resonate with it, and others will not. Some people, it may take them longer to resonate with your message. They'll be aware of you, but they won't realize that you're offering a safe harbor for them.
Exactly, exactly, exactly.
And another thing that we did touch on there was filling your own cup first. And I think this
Mm,
is like there's so many stories and analogies around this, whether it's putting on your oxygen mask first before your child on an airplane, that if you can't save yourself first, you won't be able to help other people. If you try to help other people first and you find yourself unconscious, you just become another casualty for them to be responsible for. And it's about
exactly.
refilling your tank first. If you can refill your capacity to help others, you will be of more value to them in the long run.
Yes, yeah, definitely. And so much of that refilling your cup is, as I mentioned, like meeting yourself where you are in that moment, right? Like, and noticing what you need right then. And this happens throughout the day, because at different times in the day, you're going to need different things. And different days, you're going to need different things. Different seasons of your life, you're going to need different things. So, really having that conversation, that honest conversation and compassionate conversation with yourself, and saying, okay, what do I need right now? And then taking one little tiny step to give yourself that. It doesn't have to be a lot. Um, and I like what you say, that, the oxygen mask, and putting it on the child before yourself. I also personally have an image of, like, literally having a cup and filling it up with water and then pouring it out, right? And, like, there's literally only so much water that you can pour out. And you can sit there and keep shaking and shaking and shaking and shaking. And you might get little tiny extra drops out. But the more you do that, your arm gets tired, your whole body gets tired, right? Like, if you just try it, you, like, right now, then you're going to realize, like, not only does it get tired, but it starts tensing up. And that's what our body does when we don't have enough energy, when we aren't filling ourselves up. Our body goes into a stress mode, it goes into the fight and flight mode, right? And so that's creates physical tension within our entire body. It releases hormones that say, get me out of here, right? And in short bursts, this is good. It helps us get out of dangerous situations. But in long, extended sessions, this is really bad for our bodies, right? Chronic stress leads to so many unhealthy symptoms: hypertension, heart disease, depression, anxiety disorders, burnout, right? Just to name a few. You know, it can also have, you can see it in your mood swings, in overreacting to small things that, if you were felt more balanced, if you had more energy in you, you might not be responding to. There are a lot of studies that are showing that, when we feel good about ourselves, when we're feeling that positive energy coming into ourselves, when we believe, embody the fact that we are enough, then not only does this fill us up, but this ripples out into the world around us, and it changes the atmosphere that we're living. So not just ourselves, but also, our family members, our friends, our coworkers, if you're a boss, then the people that are working under you, right? And it is just, and it's such an important thing. And I think so often we forget in our society that this is where it needs to start. We need to start with ourselves. And it doesn't matter how often, we change what our company offers, or, I don't know, wellness programs that we may have, like if we don't start doing that ourselves, we don't start having that conversation, filling our own cup, then those things aren't going to work, right? It's all about this ripple effect, and that ripple effect, we are the drop.
It's one thing to fill our cup and pass it out to, let's say, our family and our loved ones. It's another thing then when it comes to the workplace, and it's a matter of filling your cup so that you can be the best employee, the best boss, the best team manager. That
The
if you
best
don't,
entrepreneur.
the
Yeah.
best entrepreneur, if you don't fill your cup first and recharge your batteries, then you can't serve others, you can't serve your customers, you can't serve your community. What boundaries would you impose on yourself to make sure that you always fill your cup first, that maybe you have a threshold to how many cups you try to fill before coming back to fill your own?
I love that. And I'm going to respond with it depends. Because every person is different, right? So my some of my boundaries may not be the same as someone else's, but I would say that the first boundary that we have to create is creating that communication with ourselves and constantly checking in, right? And this is not a normal thing for us to do, right? So maybe the first boundary is like putting it in your phone, like every few hours, have your little alarm that says, "How are you doing?" Right? And really meeting yourself as a friend, right? Turning into yourself and saying, "Hi, friend, how are you doing?" And then listening to what comes up, right? And then allowing that to then dictate how we take that next step. If you are feeling, if what's coming up is like, I'm feeling depleted, I'm feeling like I really just, I can't go on, or I'm feeling, I don't know, an imposter syndrome or whatever that might be, right? Take a moment for yourself and give yourself just even a few seconds to just allow whatever is coming up and to sit with it, because our emotions are very fleeting. They don't stay long, right? But the longer we push them away, the more they get stuck in our body in different places, right? Um, and so when we give them the space to just acknowledge them for what they are, not hold on to them, not create a story around them, but just notice, okay, I'm feeling whatever it is. Maybe give it 20 seconds, notice it, and then you're probably starting to think about something else, right? And so that boundary of meeting yourself where you are, I think, is the most important thing to start with.
What we've come back to here is when it comes to self-care. That's a good point you made there about that if we talk to our friends the way that we talk to ourselves, that we wouldn't have many friends. And it got me thinking about, let's say, if you were playing any sports, the next thing you mess up and you're the first to say like, "Oh, God damn it, I'm awful at this," or "Why did I miss that shot?" And you get so self-critical. If you were to say that to someone else, they'd be like, "Okay, I'm obviously never going to play the sport with you again." Or
Exactly.
in the workplace, it'd be the same. If you feel that you're falling behind, you're like, "Oh, why are you so lazy? Why are you so unproductive? Why can't you see up to task?" You're constantly criticizing yourself, and that's only putting yourself in a less productive mindset. If you're constantly putting yourself down, you're knocking your own self-esteem. You're you have a festering self-doubt and imposter syndrome that you're implanting in your own thoughts. It's a matter of learning to again treat yourself the way that you would treat your friends. Flip the script instead of self-criticizing yourself. It's like how would I build up my friend, and
Hmm.
how would I encourage them if I felt that they were slacking off? What would be the right approach? Would I go and tell them they're lazy, they need to put a pep in their step and get back on track? I was like, no, I'd ease them into it. So you have to take that approach with yourself too. And again, that comes back to self-awareness. It's self-compassion as well at the same time.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And that, within that conversation, like reminding yourself that you are worthy, You are enough, right? So many of our limiting beliefs come from feeling that we're not worthy of whatever it is that's happening. Maybe something good at work, maybe something that should be better at work, or how we treat ourselves. Like, oh, I'm not worthy. Like I don't deserve that time for myself. I need to give that to everyone else. Right. And just that reminder of I'm enough. I am worthy. We are so ingrained to not think of ourselves in that positive light. And so before you go to bed, or right when you wake up, before you do anything else, remind yourself, I'm worthy. I'm enough. Because when you say it in those times, like right before you go to bed or right when you're waking up, right, your mind is treating that as though it's true. And so when you go throughout the rest of your day, you're feeling a little bit, a little bit more lifted, a little bit more powerful, a little bit more you. So, that I'm enough, I'm worthy. I do think that that's a really important thing that we should be doing.
Yeah, I think that's another thing, the power of words and the power of our own thoughts. And these affirmations, people often just overlook them and be like, oh yeah, it's just a few words that I can see, whatever I tell myself, yeah, I'm going to believe it. It's like, but if you don't truly believe it, uh, let's say you can have those affirmations morning and evening, but they have to be ones that you have some belief in. You can't be like,
Yes.
oh, you wake up in the morning being like, I am a millionaire, I am Superman, I can take on the world, where you can feel yourself, let's say, falling apart inside. You're going to look at that and you're going to say it, but it's going to be meaningless.
Yep.
But if you say a thing, maybe it starts off with, I am enough and I am grateful for, and maybe it's like, I'm grateful for my partner. I am grateful for my kids. I'm grateful to see my kids smile when I get home from work. And all these things that you set up small beliefs first. And
Totally.
yes, and it's being able to fall back on those, that if you feel self-critical, you know that your those affirmations, they form a base for you. They form a foundation that no matter how much you criticize yourself, then when those intrusive thoughts and that self-critical part of your brain kind of starts knocking you down, you've already set a foundation.
I completely agree. I completely agree. And the word, I think, resilience and empowering, right? It's empowering yourself to meet yourself where you are and give yourself what you need, right? And then that reminder, I'm enough. And as you say, if you don't feel like you're worthy, you can say, I'm working on feeling worthy, right? Like taking it a step back. Um, and I love what you mentioned about gratitude. Gratitude is so incredibly important. There are so many studies that show how important gratitude is. So, for any doubters out there, please let me tell you that this is science. Gratitude changes the way that we perceive the world around us. And so if you're noticing, that you're just constantly looking at negative, 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 find 5 things in your life that you're grateful for. And sometimes it can take a little time to think about it, right? But if you point out those 5 things that you're grateful for, all of a sudden your brain goes, oh, okay, so I can step out of this flight, flight response, excuse me. Um, I can start working into that more of that calming response, that parasympathetic response. I can remind myself I'm okay, I'm safe, right? Because so often those negative terms are there because we're not feeling safe. And that safety isn't necessarily a quote unquote real thing. Our brains are wired to be in a little, small space that we can protect ourselves in. When we start pushing ourselves out of those boundaries, that's when we start getting these, stress responses. And it was great when we were, cavemen. Nowadays, our brains, they're still not quite there yet, right? They're still very much wired to protecting yourself. Um, and the way we protect ourselves isn't necessarily the same way as they used to be, you know, that many years ago. millennia ago. And so, when you're taking that time for the gratitude, you start remembering, oh, okay, no, 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 things are actually okay. And then that physical, that mind change, those thought changes actually start changing our physical body and our responses within our body. It stops that cortisol release, right? Or at least it slows it down. It helps our body go, right? So it is important that we do these things, that we take those steps out of negativity, that we look at the gratitude. And if by doing that, when you catch yourself going through those negative moments, hey, what are these 5 things that I'm grateful for? Little by little, it becomes the norm, right? You start looking at that. So we would say like plus like equals like, right? The more you put on the same thing, it's just going to increase, increase, increase. So if you start doing the opposite, right? So if instead of doing all this negative self-talk, you're doing the positive self-talk, right? You're pushing back and you're starting to change that. You're starting to literally rewire your brain, which is pretty fascinating. And then that also goes into the body and how your body responds to it.
I think it was only recently I was listening to Tom Belieu talking about that, about rewiring your brain and creating new connections in your brain, and how and neuroplasticity, and how for a long time people believe that you can't make new connections, you can only improve the ones that are there. And I found it really interesting that there was so much conflict against it. I'm sure there probably still is conflict today against it, but it's so interesting knowing that we have the power, we have the mental capacity to change uh, the connections in our brain, to rewire our own brain.
Yeah, it's
It's
fascinating.
yeah, it is beyond fascinating.
So to me, right, like especially coming from a yoga background, a mindfulness background, reminding everyone who's listening, your body has the tools to heal itself. Sometimes that's just by changing the way that we're thinking. Sometimes that's by changing the way we're breathing, the way we move, right? Your body has the tools to heal itself. And this starts with creating a compassionate conversation with ourselves. What do we need right now? And then taking those small steps that add up, and if it's needed, then working with a professional to be your guide, whether that is a therapist or a coach, right? But your body does have these tools that it needs to heal. We just have to start listening to them. There is also a push for yoga that is very much fitness based. I'm not taking away from that. I think that that can be for many people a good introduction to yoga, but there is so much more to yoga than the postures that they have you do and the quote unquote workout. Yoga itself is not an exercise. It is, it's yoga is love. Yoga literally is learning how to love yourself. And through that love, allowing yourself to connect with what is important. That can start with the movement. That can start with breath work. That can start with meditation. That can start with part of yoga is creating a supportive daily routine for yourself, right? And so much of this we don't think about when we think of yoga, because in the Western society, yoga is like what you're saying, right? Like that so much of what's become popular is fitness style yoga. And once again, I don't think that's necessarily, bad. That can be a really good way for a lot of people to get into it, to start onto it. But I think it's really important that we realize that that is not yoga. That is only such a little small part of yoga, and yoga is loving yourself.
People may not have a long attention span, but I think it affects those around us physically a lot more than it does, let's say, people who we only see online, because everything online can be filtered. And I mean, you have these influencers and they're putting up beach photos 365 days a year. They probably went on one holiday and they're posting the same photos and just filtering them and scheduling them for a whole year and making people think that they're living this high life 12 months of the year. Um, But it's when you're in that physical environment with someone, and like you or me, and we're so, let's say, enlightened by our health and wellness practices, and it takes an effect on everyone else around us. They're like, oh, why are you so cheery today? It's like, what did you have for breakfast to be in such a good mood, to be so high energy? And I think it affects those around us first. And I think that's the best thing, that by prioritizing your self-care, not only is it giving you the energy to actively serve others around you, but you're passively serving others around you as well, just by showing up in a, let's say, a high energized um, form of yourself, and by showing up and being, not kind of rubbing it in everyone's face that, oh, look at me, I'm healthy and fit, and you're not taking care of your nutrition. That's the wrong approach. But it's the fact that you have the right mindset, that you're taking care of your physical health, your mental health, you're taking care of your relationships, and you're being there for others. But it could be something as simple as, because today is International Happiness Day as well, when we're recording this, it as something as simple as smiling. It and
Yeah.
it can be anyone in your life. It might even be a stranger. You might go down to the shop, and you could, let's say, smile at the person at the checkout, and thank them for something as simple as, oh, thank you for helping with this today. You're after speeding up my day. I'm really grateful that you're able to help me with my shopping. Or it could be someone that you meet down the aisle, and it's like, oh, thank you for reaching that thing off the top shelf for me. And just making them feel like they've served you too, and making them feel like, oh, I had a purpose today for that one person, and how that ripples into their day.
Totally, totally. And there are just to bringing back my nerdiness in science, there are even studies that prove that that is also true, right? Like when we go out and we have these conversations with people, as you mentioned at the checkout, you say, "Hey, how's it going?" Right? And you acknowledge them as a person, like that changes their day. That could change their life, and you don't even know it, right? But not only that, it helps you feel better because when you give to someone else, when you're giving that happiness, it continues to fill you up. So it is very much this cycle that we're creating, and the more we do it ourselves, the more the people around us also feel it and they want to do it, right? As I think I mentioned, right, there's these studies that have been done that show that like when I don't know, did I mention this earlier? Anyway, even if I didn't. So there's studies that show that like when you feel worthy in yourself and you feel like your well-being is good and you're happy, right? This changes the positive connection between you and others, and it changes the way that the whole community feels around you. So there was um, a study done in a school um, by, I think it was Marissa Peer and her team, that had the school had a lot of issues with bullying. And they went in and they had, this is once again going back to the affirmations that we were talking about. They had them every morning. And I don't know if it was throughout the day, but definitely every morning before this like classes started, they had them say, "I am enough," to themselves. And within a few months, like this was every day, repeating, "I am enough, I am enough, I am enough." Within a few months, the atmosphere of the school completely changed. Bullying reduced, right? Because people were feeling more self-worth. The kids were feeling more self-worth. The kids were feeling this better well-being, this, positive charge within them. And when they felt that, they wanted to share that to other people. They weren't feeling those negative thoughts. They weren't feeling that negativity that they then spewed out, right? Which then caused the bullying. And it completely changed. So meeting yourself where you are, acknowledging your worth, acknowledging that you are enough, right? And then allowing that naturally to just shed out and share it to the world and create that ripple effect is incredible.
If someone wants to start having that influence on others and they want to start their own ripple effect, what approach would you recommend to them? In give yourself some leeway, spirit, it's always what is the simplest step I can take today to improve even just 1%? What is the simplest way that I can do this? So what is the simplest way that I can cause a positive ripple effect, first by self-care for me, and then see that ripple out to others?
Meet yourself with love and compassion. Be your friend. Start your day off with saying, "Hi, friend. How are you?" Throughout the day, remind yourself, "Hi, friend. How are you?" At the end of the day, say, "Hi, friend. How are you?" And listen with compassion. Don't go into a negative cycle. Allow those emotions, whatever is coming up, right? Because happiness isn't, it's not just always being happy. We're human. We have a range of emotion. That's a beautiful thing. Allow those emotions to come and allow them to go. Always meeting yourself with "Hi, friend."
If it was me, what my approach would be, what's the simplest thing that I can do? And it's always the things that are so simple that you almost think it's silly, that it's too simple. You think that it wouldn't even work. And mine is just smile, smile more. It's like even you might set a routine in your days. Like, what's the first thing I do in the morning? I look in the bathroom mirror, brush my teeth, and I smile. And that's the first smile of the day. And next thing is like, when's the next time I'm going to smile? It's like, oh, when you clock in at work, smile is the first person you see when you walk in the door. And you put that habit in place and you stack on it. And next thing you realize that you're smiling a lot more in your day. And then you realize, oh, wow, I'm actually feeling a lot better about myself. And because you're smiling at other people throughout your day, you're probably cheering them up too.
I love that. Yeah, staring in the mirror. And maybe, smile and say, "Hi, friend."
There we go.
Right?
Stack them, smile and say hi, friend. And then your
You
hi
know?
friend is smiling right back at you.
Exactly. So you get that physical benefit of feeling that smile, right? Which releases happy endorphins in the body. It triggers the brain saying, "Okay, I'm okay." And then you have that mental part as well. That that conversation to yourself. That those two, oh, so powerful. I love it.
I can just imagine straight away. I was like staring at myself first thing in the morning, going, "Hi, friend," into the mirror. I'm like, I'm going to creep myself out because especially I have like early mornings and like 4 a.m. If I hear myself saying "Hi, friend" in the dark in the mirror, I'm just like, yeah, I'm so going to scare myself before I even go to work. But again, it's about laughing at yourself. It's like I'm feeling silly doing this, but it's about seeing the humor in it, and you're still lightening your mood first thing in the morning. You're releasing those endorphins, and it's what better way
Totally.
to start your morning?
Totally. No, and laughing, oh my goodness. Such a beautiful practice. So much goodness coming out of laughter. And when we laugh at ourselves, that just helps us release those limiting beliefs more.
Yeah, 100%. Tess, so if anyone wants to get in contact with you, or if they want to hear more about your coaching, your programs, what's the best way for them to get in contact with you?
Well, the best way to get in contact with me is to come to my website. That's tessjewellarsen.coach, TESSJEW triple LARSEN.coach. And you can book a free, absolutely no obligation burnout breakthrough call that I use to help get professional women, small business owners to start stepping out of their burnout and take the first steps to building a life of balance, joy, and success. And if you decide you want to work with me, then we would do that in a different call. This call is all just goodness of helping you take those first steps out of burnout and meeting yourself where you're at and starting to love yourself.
Brilliant. I'm definitely going to throw your website name into the show notes because that was a lot of L's. That was a lot of L's for me to take in, not to mind anyone listening.
Yes, that is true. And another way that you can connect with me is I and my sister-in-law have just started our own podcast. So today was our trailer launch. The podcast is called The Happy Edit, and we talk all about how you can create a foundation for happiness in your life through different lenses. My sister-in-law is a CBT therapist and a counselor, so we kind of play off each other and have these different views, but at the same time, very much just this rich, lovely goodness of creating happiness. So I would love to have you come join us over at the Happy Edit.
Brilliant. It actually sounds great, the Happy Edit. And the fact that you launched it on International Happiness Day as well, it just
Not planned at all.
not planned at all. No coincidence there.
But to be fair, like it was like we realized this weekend that it was Happy International Happiness Day. We're like, oh, we have to launch today, like on Monday.
It gave you that accountability to get started on the podcast. So now it's finally out there. Well, the trailer's out there, but by the time this is published, episode 1, holding you accountable, episode 1 will be out there by then.
Hopefully.
Brilliant. And
It'll
if it
definitely
is,
be coming soon if it's not.
if it is, it's going straight into the show notes.
Woo! All right. Thank
Brilliant.
you so much for having me.
Well, I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and if you did, please rate and review wherever you're listening to this, because it helps improve the rating of the show and makes it more easily found by others like you. Also, if you could take a minute to share this with family, friends, or a loved one, because if you found value from this episode, they may benefit from hearing this too. And what better way to help break the stigma around mental health than by opening a space for discussion with those closest to you? If you have any feedback or questions about today's episode or the show in general, or maybe you have ideas for topics that you want me to cover in the future, you can reach out and book a call with me at giveyourselfsomeleeway.com or send me an email, eugene@leeway.ie. I read everything myself, and usually I respond within a day or so. And I love getting feedback from listeners because this podcast is a learning process for me too. And your feedback is the best way that I can improve this for you. So until then, have an amazing day, and I really look forward to talking to you sometime. Until next time, take care.